There we are. We are back. We are all here in Brady Bunch format. Yay! So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. If you've been,
Hi, Mike. Hi, Dan. Hi, John.
Hey.
Hello. Shani's back.
What's up, Dan?
I'm back. Yeah, not 100%, but I'm back right now, so I'm happy.
Hell, you're there. You're upright. Yay!
Yes, I'm upright. Yes.
So we spent the first half talking about some different multi-system things. We had some great questions. Thank you guys for watching. Now we wanted to share some thoughts, talk a little bit about David Bowie and his influence on the DJ industry. And the way I wanted to kind of start this off is your earliest recollection of a David Bowie song, or when you first heard about David Bowie. So thinking back, Mike, why don't you start us off? Because you've been doing a lot of reminiscing and thinking about David Bowie today. So why don't you start us off and let's all share.
Well, I shared this one on Facebook earlier, so I hate to be redundant, but I dated a girl when I was a freshman in high school, and she was a huge Bowie fan, and she actually liked to go by the nickname Rebel for obvious reasons. And so she really was my first kind of turned me on to, so this would be 1980, and I hadn't really heard much about Bowie at that point. I was still going through my Kiss phase, and she turned me on to a lot of Bowie stuff, and I really fell in love with it. So I guess Rebel, for obvious reasons, was probably the first song that I knew by him.
Dan, what was your first one?
I kind of came onto the Bowie scene kind of maybe later, if anything. I can just, with the whole, I guess my age if nothing else, but I would say probably Let's Dance it was one of the more popular ones, and so it was the one that I knew before I even really knew who he was, what he was, or anything else. Like it was on the radio, and I'm like, okay, and even looking back, that's probably been the one that stands out to me as my favorite, just because it's so catchy, it's so fun, and it's always been a nice, feel-good type of song.
Shani?
I was always a Bowie fan. I wasn't like he was one of my favorite artists. It wasn't there, but I knew, especially being a fashion icon and all the other things that he's done in his life. So I was always interested in those kind of eclectic type artists. But I really didn't get into his music that much, because when I was growing up, I wasn't into that kind of music. So I didn't get into his music till I started DJing. But when I started DJing, I wanted to listen to like his older stuff, like Under Pressure, in the 80s, and probably even Changes that came out, I think, in 1971. So it was like, I wanted to listen to all his early stuff to kind of see where he came from. So, probably Changes would be like the earliest, I would say, but I definitely, when I was, just born, was not listening to Changes.
I don't understand why not. Changes was definitely one that I remember, an early one. My first DJ experience though was actually the song China Girl. Yeah. And I thought it was, this great song, and I had a nice sound system at the house, and I would play that thing really, really loud, and I thought it was so awesome. So one of my first dances that I went to go do, you got a bunch of high school kids going crazy, and I just thought it would work.
Wah, wah. No,
I liked it.
Right. See, you did what the DJs do. You play songs that you want to play, and not what's good for the crowd.
See, exactly. When you're a 16-year-old DJ, you learn fast. That CD, I think that was played that night, and then I think this was about the time the Robert Plant disc was, and those both were filed to never be played again.
Did you see my post today? Do you know who produced that song? His version of that song?
Was that Iggy Pop?
Well, David Bowie and Iggy Pop co-wrote China Girl. Iggy Pop first recorded it, and then a number of years later, Bowie is working with a pretty famous producer and said, "Hey, what about this song? Iggy Pop's version never became a hit." And he said, "I really think this song has hit potential if it just has a hook." He was working with Nile Rodgers from Cheap fame. And Nile Rodgers was the one that came up with that sort of Asian-sounding intro that, and said, "I don't know if Bowie's going to like this or not." He played it for Bowie, and Bowie loved it. He got it right away, and Bowie claimed that that's the thing that turned that song into a hit.
Like, I got to admit, watching your reminiscence today, I kept feeling like This is definitely going to be the seminar this year. Like a good
all Bowie. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's going to go all Bowie, but I definitely like the whole day. I'm like, I see the different things he put up. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good material for this summer. This is going to be good material for this summer. So.
Well, listen, I'll recommend this. This is the book that I read about 4 years ago. And again, and like I said on Facebook today, I was always a casual Bowie fan, but reading this book, you dive into the deep end of the pool, and I learned so much about the behind the scenes of so many of his songs and his albums. It's called David Bowie's Starman, and it's by Paul Trinka. If anybody's interested, especially today on the day that he passed away, I loved it. I thought it was a great book. I've marked it up. You can see there's a bunch of notes in the margins and stuff like that. That's how I treat my book.
Has anybody seen the video that came out Thursday for the first,
Yeah, Lazarus.
Yeah.
How haunting. It's haunting. Yeah.
It's haunting. Like people are saying that, he kind of did that on purpose. So it was like his final goodbye.
Yeah. What's the opening line of the song? Look up, I'm in the heavens, something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
It reminded me, Warren Zevon did that a number of years ago when he was very sick and dying of cancer. He made that last album. I forget the name of it, but he made that last album, which was really basically his way of saying goodbye to his fan base because he knew he was going. And hey, if you're an artist, what better way to leave the earth than to leave with one more kind of, piece of art? Yeah.
For those of you that are watching that don't know, it's the song Lazarus that just came out on his new album, and it's just eerie. He's in a hospital bed with bandages on his eyes, and the whole thing is in the hospital room. And you see him, like, he stands up a couple times, and you just see just how little he is, and just you could tell like he's not healthy. And it was just, nobody knew back then that, because he didn't let it in public, that this really was his final goodbye of doing this video.
Wow,
it's interesting. Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was just gonna say it was kind of interesting. Like looking back, I want to say it was Friday. I was watching one of the morning shows, maybe it was on Thursday, and they were talking about the new album came out, and they were just like they were saying some of the critics have been touting it's maybe even his best work yet. And so then all of a sudden, like, we hear this. I was up last night with my newborn, and all of a sudden something came through on Facebook, and I was like, this is one of those hoax things. I started searching. I was like, oh my gosh, like the timing is just insane with that part.
Yeah, that's it. I've heard that one a few times from some different experts today, is that timing and how it's all eerie and kind of all going together. And next thing you know, they're going to be predicting that the Mets will win the World Series, but that's another story for another day.
You can talk about sports after this weekend, John.
Oh,
Make yourself a place kicker.
Yeah, we need one of those. So let's play some Bowie. Is there
her voice? I kind of like to do the both sides, and the older people know David Bowie, but I would play Let's Dance. I mean, that would be a song that I'd play Let's Dance. I would even play maybe Dancing in the Streets, his version of Dancing in the Streets in a set. One of those two would probably be one of the ones that I would go to that are more the mainstream. So I'm not going to the eclectic songs that's only a couple people would be like, is that Bowie? I don't know. I would go to the ones that maybe a lot of people would know about and try to get the dance floor going.
Very good. Dan, you took a deep breath. Go.
Yeah, I would go. Obviously, Let's Dance. Like I said, that was my first memory, so I would definitely go with that. But I would also, if I really wanted it, especially this weekend, I could imagine this being hot. Would you go with the Under Pressure? And just people are kind of catching it, and then just kind of really letting enough of that go that people are hearing it, and then of course you mix into Ice Ice Baby just to kind of mess with their heads. But yeah, I mean that's those are the two that to my mind come to the forefront. I'm sure if I sat down and listened to the collection, I'd be like, oh yeah, I didn't realize Bowie or things like that. But
Mike?
Yeah, I agree with the songs that have been thrown out already. Another one from that same era is Modern Love, and it's got that. I don't know exactly BPM, but I'll bet with a little bit of tweaking, you could get Modern Love into Shake It Off, because it's right up in that, like, very quick, almost like a swing type of beat. And when I saw your theme tonight, John, I was trying to think of Bowie songs that I played at parties. And I think Modern Love and Let's Dance are probably the only two that I've ever played to try to get people dancing. Obviously, you can satisfy that request by playing one of his slower songs during dinner or salad and just kind of, saying, hey, here's your Bowie. But that's why I said clarify this for me. Do you mean get people dancing? You could try Modern Love, too.
And my thought, I would have probably gone with Modern Love was my initial thought, but my 18-year-old did this in a bar when he was playing it, and it kind of blew me. He did the David Bowie to Vanilla Ice, mixed the two together, and he did it really, really quite well. And I've never played those back to back like that. And when he did that, it's like, oh, that's really kind of a cool little thing, especially with the right crowd, where a person could do that mix and go actually back and forth between the two. So, yeah, Dan, I think I'm again there with you that the putting the two together to kind of throw people would be it's kind of a cool change.
Under Pressure was not a hit at all in the States. I think it peaked in the mid 50s on the Billboard charts. I could be wrong about that, but I know it wasn't an established hit. And by the time Vanilla Ice did Ice Ice Baby, Queen and David Bowie had already dropped that song from their set list when they were playing live. So it was basically a forgotten song. And you could say what you will about Vanilla Ice, but he basically discovered or rediscovered that hook and turned it into a very danceable song. So I give him credit for that. And then people went back and listened to Under Pressure, and people were like, oh yeah, well, how do we miss that the first time? It's such a catchy hook,
Talking about that, I actually wrote a couple, that people don't know, besides Ice Ice Baby, there were 11 rap songs that used David Bowie songs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's 11. Should you want me to go through them? So people know?
Yeah, please.
Quickly.
If you've got it.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah, I got it.
I want you to sing them, by the way. Go.
Yeah, all right, so Diddy did Been Around the World, and that was Let's Dance. It had the beat of Let's Dance behind it. Public Enemy did Night of the Living Bassheads. That was Fame. So for people that want to write these down and maybe listen to them, I'll kind of go a little slow. EPMD did It Wasn't Me, It Wasn't Fame, which of course, that kind of says it in the name. They used Fame. The theme, a lot of people use Fame. A lot of the hip hop artists ended up using Fame. Ice Cube. Yeah, Ice Cube did Alive on Arrival. That was also Fame. Dr. Dre did a song called Fame. That was Fame. I'll do one more Fame. Jay-Z did the song Takeover. That was Fame. Jay Dilla did a song called Take Notice. That was Soul Love. LP did a song called Innocent Leader. That was Soul Love. And then Rhapsody did a song called For Everything. That was Soul Love. And then there were two Under Pressure ones. Charlie Baltimore did a song called Ice. She used Under Pressure. And then, of course, lastly, Vanilla Ice did Ice Ice Baby, which was Under Pressure.
And every time Fame gets sampled, Yoko Ono makes money. Because John Lennon was the co-writer of Fame, and she owns his work now. So every time Fame gets sampled and it sells a copy, Yoko Ono makes the money.
Robert in the chat. By the way, guys, in the chat room, if you've got some questions, throw those out if they're related to what we're talking about, or even if they're just something you're kind of wondering about. Toss them out there. We can handle anything. We got about another 12 to 13 minutes before we're going to wrap things up tonight. Yeah, Robert.
He wasn't just, to me, he wasn't just like a music icon. I think he changed fashion too. From day one, he was wearing the slender suits before anybody wore all of them. And, he was an artist, for people that don't know it. Actually, here in Chicago, they put starting today, they put a couple of his paintings on commission over at the one of the places for people to come and see it. So, and a little, tidbit is he also went to miming school when he was younger. So yeah, he actually went to school for miming.
And an actor.
Yeah,
and an actor as well. He appeared in a number of different motion pictures. Yeah, and on Broadway, He played the Elephant Man on Broadway.
Yeah.
Back in the '80s. So yeah, he's definitely a Renaissance man.
Definitely.
Who would you guys think is kind of, for the newer music? We mentioned, of course, a lot of rappers using his different backbeats and such. But who do you think is influenced today by David Bowie music? If you could look at some now that they may be influenced by what he did.
For me, I don't want to say so much as music, but I want to say as his whole persona. I would say like a Lady Gaga for like his whole persona of how he, I'm definitely not comparing the music, but I'm comparing just the way he portrayed himself, whether it be like out on stage or in his music. I kind of see the way the way she came out with her little monsters, the way she, came out. For me, it's, if you guys could, maybe, get me a music person, but I think the whole persona would be like a Lady Gaga.
Yeah, I don't know that there is anybody musically, John, because one of the things that's interesting about Bowie's career is he didn't have one genre. Bowie played in a million different genres, and he created a few. I mean, he helped create glam rock. And then, like I said on Facebook, the amazing thing about Bowie is just as glam rock is exploding, he got bored with it and moved on. So I don't know that musically you can say there's any one artist, but I agree with Jeannie. And so even going back to the 80s, Madonna, and she has said this in numerous interviews, that she owes a lot of her influence to David Bowie, who basically taught her and so many other artists how to stretch the boundaries. All of that stuff in the 80s where, there was that androgynous stuff in the 80s with Boy George and Prince and stuff like that. That all began in the glam rock era, and Bowie had a lot to do with that.
Interesting. Who would have been some of Bowie's contemporaries then at the time that would have been kind of with him and doing something similar to that starting that glam rock movement?
Well, Lou Reed, obviously. Velvet Underground was huge. Same thing. I think the New York Dolls were definitely influenced by Bowie and helped create the glam rock era, which them becoming popular, or at least underground popular, helped groups like Kiss, and basically they taught rock music that it's also about theater, that it's also about presentation. So I'd say those are some of his contemporaries.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, even like Rob right now on the channel said like Elton John, like the way he kind of came out as well. It's like, I'm not saying that everybody over the top we're comparing, but it's kind of like they all have that showmanship that, David Bowie wasn't just about the music. He was about just coming out and putting like himself into it. He wasn't a dancer. He didn't come out and, do things like that, but it was just like him inner self just came out when he was performing. You saw it in the videos, you saw it on stage, wherever he was performing. That's just like him. Like, this is me. I'm glam rock. This is how I sing. This is how I perform. And I'm married to a hot supermodel. So this is what I do.
Jimmy Spin mentioned Queen. Was Freddie Mercury, do you think, influenced by Bowie in his early days? I see nodding of head.
I don't think there's any question.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any question.
I agree with that.
I think in some aspects, we've talked about it a little bit here, and you kind of follow a lot of what people are saying, but he had such a kind of a weird, I don't want to say a weird impact, but he just, because of who he was and how he went about it, and just kind of this persona that he was, the way he was all the time, that it's hard to say, I think, that anybody could say, well, no, I wasn't influenced at all. Like, I wasn't influenced at all. Whether you're influenced maybe in a negative direction, if you're going to say, I'm going to avoid this, this area altogether. But anything that, like, we think back to the 80s and we think back, even to the 70s with this, that there's some sort of everybody's interconnected when you get into this business. To say somebody didn't influence you somehow, especially someone that like him, I think it's very easy to say. You mentioned a name. Yeah, I'm sure he was.
Yeah, and I think with probably Freddie Mercury, it was probably a little more obvious with his, there was a level of flamboyancy, especially towards his the middle part of the career, if I'm not mistaken. That's when Freddie was really into more of the stage attire and coming and putting on the show that way. Robert also mentioned the Christmas collab he did with Bing Crosby. Now, have you guys all seen that one by chance?
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah.
Your personal live who hasn't seen that, they play that every year.
They do, and I showed that to my children, a couple of the boys the other day, and they looked at that and they were like, "Is that real?" I mean, as far as that just looks kind of creepy and scary.
That was his persona.
When was that made? Mid 80s?
80s, yeah.
How far does that go back? Mid 80s?
Yeah, I think mid to early.
I don't know if I've seen it. Joy the World and Peace on Earth that they weaved together. Is that the two?
Oh, which one did they do? I
don't remember.
Was it White Chris?
I know the song that they weaved together.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I guess it's kind of cheesy, but that was the 80s. So your kids.
That's so
little drummer boy.
Kids are lucky they didn't grow up then.
Yeah, that's what we were. We were cheesy and creepy looking.
Yeah, exactly.
The 80s were the 80s. I mean, it was a crazy era with the way dressing was and music and everything.
And we thought Elton John was cool.
Right.
Didn't he do a tour in a jumpsuit once, Elton John?
Probably. What didn't he wear?
No.
I mean, he was the current Liberace.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
And I just remember his, what was it, his Captain Electric? Was that one of Elton John?
Right, Elton John, yeah.
Yeah, he had the shoes and the big glasses and the big hat. And
yeah.
We're back to our vinyl, memories of vinyl. That was
right, exactly.
Good stuff. Well, are there any questions in the crowd? Somebody, we've drifted off into the Elton John songs.
Right. It's David Bowie.
Yeah, we're going to come back. I took us on a train wreck. I'm sorry. It was my fault. We did have a question up there earlier. I wonder if I could find that. If you guys have got any other questions, please throw those out there because we've got a few more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody can get access to his new album, check it out. They're really having rave reviews, about it. And if anybody hasn't seen the video that came out, if you want to see something kind of eerie and creepy, it's crazy the way he made it.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look at that. Go ahead.
I had a question basically I'm going to throw out here. I mean, everybody was talking to me today, it was such a surprise and stuff like that. It was very much not talked about with the cancer at all. It seemed like, I mean, that was a shock to me. Like, I didn't even know about it, period. Was that something you guys had kind of heard, but kind of put on the back burner? Like, it was silent and I'm just not that oblivious.
No, he even sent a letter, like he sent an email to Brian Eno. If anybody knows who Brian Eno is in his relationship, he sent him a letter just saying, it's been great working with you. The new album is dropping this week. And I just want to say thank you. And Brian Eno, like now he's saying, that was his final goodbye to me, but he didn't even realize that when he got the email. He just figured the new album's dropping. He's just kind of thanking me for everything we've been through all these years. He said he knew he was sick, but didn't know it was the extent of how sick he was. So I think he kind of just kept it within the family.
Yeah, and you got to give a lot of credit to the family and whatever close, assistance and. Because usually things like this leak out, and they really never did. I mean, he hasn't been in the limelight for the last number of years, and so there are rumors about why he hadn't. I mean, I remember reading about a year ago that maybe he gained a lot of weight, and he was always so vain that he didn't want to be seen in public as a big guy. And then he released an album a couple years ago, and you saw him, and you saw pictures of him, and that wasn't the case. But to answer your question, Dan, I don't think anyone other than some whispered rumors. That's why it was sort of a shock this morning. I know somebody wrote on Facebook, how can it be a shock? The guy smoked his whole career and everything else. But when somebody who you just dropped an album on Friday and it was his birthday on Friday, I went for a run Friday listening to nothing but Bowie music because it was his birthday. And then, you wake up Monday morning and that was the first thing I read on CNN. And my wife will tell you, she was in the bedroom and I was in the living room and I went, oh, and she went, what? And I said, David Bowie's dead. And she was like, David Bowie's like, that's how shocking it was.
Yeah.
Because there were no rumors that he was dead.
Yeah. Yeah, it really came out of left field. There was a question that was up a little bit here. Mike, they were wondering if you would be wearing David Bowie's size 2 pants at the next convention.
I do. No, I do a lot of running, but I'm not. Bowie was a lean What do you call himself? The Thin White Duke? I'll never be the Thin White Duke.
I just think he should just wear a glam rock suit.
I will. I'll wear a glam rock suit anytime.
Oh, that'll be great. In his presentation he'll be doing later this summer, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Walter will be.
DJ of the year, 2016. I'll be in a glam rock suit.
You gotta have the wig too. You gotta make a wig too. Come on.
Yeah. What? The hair's not long enough, then?
I have no room to talk, so yes.
Don't forget the makeup. We gotta do a little makeup too.
Do a little eyeliner. Yeah.
Yeah. I was looking through some pictures of Mike from about 6 years ago when he had the long hair and such, and I was thinking of using that picture for a preview for tonight. But good stuff. Good stuff. We're going to wrap things up. Any final thoughts before we shut down tonight?
I think it's one of those things that it's good to go back and listen to your old music collections. That's one of the things. I have Sirius. I just recently picked it up this year, and it's one of the things I really had enjoyed is I'll go back and I'll listen to the decade channels and just hear songs that I hadn't even put credence to in years. And that's, I think, one of the things that came out today more than anything was when this came out. Oh my gosh, I loved insert X song here, and some of the tributes. So I think it's important for us to go back and do that. First off, as DJs, so we don't get in the rut of playing the same thing every week, but also from the standpoint of appreciating what's out there that we might take for granted until, unfortunately, we're having a conversation like we had tonight.
Good point.
Yeah. My thing is the last couple months we've lost a lot of music icons. A lot of them have passed away, and it's just a shame that their death kind of brings out people to say, "Hey, do you remember this song? Do you remember that song?" It's just play good music, play the classics, play. It's not about us. Let's get the good music back out there and play it. And I mean, I definitely will be dropping some Bowie this weekend. At my events and at the club, and in tribute for him. And it's another icon lost. He brought a lot to the music, and like I said, I mean, he even influenced the hip hop.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff.
And I agree that it's sad, but I also think for a silver lining, at least somebody like Bowie, who had a 45-year career, at least he left us with a lifetime of great music, and I really do think there is. And that book that I read turned me on to a lot of his stuff, his deeper stuff, and I had never really, I knew his hits and the singles that he released, but you want to discover an amazing artist, go back and listen to some of those early albums and some of those songs you probably never heard on the radio, and there are some gems in there. So it's sad that he's gone, but I think the silver lining is at least he had an outlet to leave us with all this great work.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you guys for joining us tonight. I enjoyed the chat about David Bowie. For those of you who are watching, if this is your first time watching, thank you for being with us tonight. And we try to do this every Monday. We try to have a live chat. This week, we're actually going to have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of live chat because we've got all sorts of cool things that we want to talk about with the upcoming Mobile Beat Show. So we'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock Eastern. We're a little bit later tomorrow night because we're going to be coming in with Mitch Taylor, and we're going to be talking about making sales and moving that bride from that meeting at the bridal show to a meeting in real person, that way. So that'll be 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Mike, Shani, Dan, thank you for joining us.